He just wanted a good deal on a used car. A normal day, a normal drive, until a quiet street turned into something else entirely. The looks, the silence, the headlights in the dark, none of it felt like coincidence. What happens when buying a car becomes a fight to make it home alive? I found the listing on a Tuesday night, scrolling through Craigslist while sitting in my apartment with the TV low in the background. A 2012 Honda Accord, clean title, silver, listed at $6,500. The pictures looked decent. Not showroom nice, but the kind of car that fits between responsibility and pride. Something reliable for work, something I wouldn't feel ashamed to pull up in for a date. The seller's name was Mark. He lived about 45 minutes out of the city, in a suburb I'd only driven through once before. His message back was short, almost clipped: cars available. Cash only. Meet after 6. The next day was humid, the air heavy enough that every breath felt like warm water. I left work early, tucked an envelope of bills in my jacket pocket, and hit the highway with my windows down. The sky was bruising into evening when I exited onto the 2-lane road leading to his neighborhood. Tall trees pressed in on both sides, their shadows long and sharp. I caught myself glancing at the rearview mirror more than usual. Old habit. When you grow up learning to watch your back, it sticks. His address was at the end of a cul-de-sac, a cluster of beige houses with big yards. Sprinklers clicked quietly in the distance. I parked across the street from the house number he gave me, double-checking the messages before stepping out. There were 2 trucks in the driveway, both spotless, both bigger than any street in the city would comfortably allow. The Honda sat near the curb, clean but not detailed, like someone made an effort just shy of professional. The door opened before I even reached the car. A white man in his late 40s, tall and broad, with sun-reddened skin and a baseball cap. He didn't wave. Just stood there, watching. When I smiled and said, "Hey, Mark. I'm here about the Accord," he nodded once and walked down the steps slowly, like every step was a test. His eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand, then back to my face, lingering longer than felt polite. "You're early," he said, voice flat. "Traffic was lighter than I expected," I replied, forcing a small laugh. "Hope that's okay." He shrugged. "Cars over there. You can look." I started walking toward it, but I could feel him behind me, close, too close for someone who didn't know me. I ran my hand over the roof, crouched to check the tires. Everything seemed fine at first glance. I asked if I could start it. He didn't answer right away. When I glanced back, he was staring past me, toward a house 2 doors down, where another man was standing on his porch, arms crossed. Watching us. Not watching me, exactly, watching this. Like he was waiting for something to happen. "Keys are inside," Mark said finally. "I'll get them." He walked back toward the house, and I stood there, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was. No cars passing, no kids playing, just the faint hum of sprinklers and the weight of 2 sets of eyes that didn't feel friendly. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. Something told me not to look distracted. When he came back, he didn't hand me the keys right away. He just stood there for a second, looking at me like I'd stepped somewhere I shouldn't have. Then he said, slow and deliberate, "Where'd you say you're from?" I hesitated. "Midtown. Near Jefferson." He nodded, but his face didn't change. "Long way from home." I took the keys when he finally offered them, started the car, listened to the engine. It sounded fine. Perfect, even. But every second felt heavier, like the air was thickening. I thought about saying I needed to call my bank, buy myself an excuse to leave, but then I saw movement, another man, walking his dog, slowing as he passed, eyes locked on me the whole time. Not on the car. Not on Mark. On me. That's when I realized something I hadn't noticed before. There were no other cars parked on this street. None. Just driveways full of trucks and SUVs. And me, in my faded gray sedan, sitting there like a stain someone hadn't scrubbed out yet. Mark leaned into the open window, his shadow cutting across my hands on the steering wheel. "So," he said, voice low, almost friendly now, "you got the cash on you?" For a moment, I thought about lying. Saying no, saying I'd have to run to the bank. But I felt his breath near my ear when he leaned on the doorframe, and something told me he'd already decided I had it. People like him could smell hesitation, and hesitation was dangerous out here. So I said, "Yeah, I've got it," and my voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. "Good," he said, tapping the roof twice before stepping back. "Let's handle it inside." "Got the title in the kitchen." I froze. Everything in me screamed, "Don't go inside." My hand gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. "Can't we do it out here? Safer that way, right?" I tried to smile, keep my tone easy. His eyes narrowed, and for a second, there was nothing human in them. Just calculation. Behind him, I noticed the man on the porch had moved closer, standing on the edge of his lawn now, arms still crossed. The dog walker was gone, but his absence didn't feel like relief. It felt like the silence after a slammed door. Mark tilted his head, like he was working out a puzzle. "Sure," he said finally, voice even. "Out here's fine." He held out his hand for the envelope. I passed it over, my fingers brushing his calloused palm. He didn't look at the money right away. Instead, he looked over my shoulder, like he was checking if someone was watching. Maybe making sure someone saw this transaction happen. I signed the title on the hood of the car, my pen shaking just enough to make the letters ugly. He watched every stroke. When I handed the pen back, he didn't smile. Didn't thank me. Just said, "Guess that's it." But he didn't move. Neither did I. The street felt tighter now, like it was folding in. The porch man had disappeared. For a second, I wondered if he'd gone inside to make a call. My stomach twisted. I pictured blue and red lights washing over the beige siding, imagined hands pulling me out of the driver's seat before I could even explain. I thought about how headlines get written for people like me. Man found with cash, no clear explanation. I saw myself on the news, a mugshot pulled from some old ID, a voice saying, "He was here for a car, but something went wrong." "You good to go?" Mark said suddenly, snapping me back. But his tone didn't sound like permission. It sounded like a warning. Like, "Leave now, while you still can." I slid into the driver's seat, the Honda's fabric still warm from the day's sun. My hands were slick on the wheel. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught a glimpse in the side mirror, Mark, still standing there, watching. No wave. No nod. Just eyes, flat and hard, until distance turned him into a blur. I thought it was over. Thought once I hit the main road, I'd breathe again. But 10 minutes later, a pair of headlights appeared behind me. Bright. Too bright. They didn't back off when I sped up. Didn't pass when the road opened. My pulse jumped, hammering in my ears. I checked the mirror and caught a glimpse, a lifted truck, white paint glowing under the streetlights. No front plate. I took a random turn, then another. The truck followed. I felt my throat closing, that old familiar fear curling up like smoke in my chest. My phone buzzed again, maybe a friend, maybe someone wondering if I made it home, but I didn't dare look. Both hands locked on the wheel. Eyes forward. Just drive. That was all I could do. When I finally saw the glow of the freeway, I hit the gas so hard the engine whined. The truck hung back for a beat, then turned off onto some side road, its lights vanishing like nothing ever happened. But the feeling didn't leave. Not when I merged into traffic. Not when I saw the skyline reappear through the haze. Not even when I pulled into my apartment lot and sat there, staring at the new car I'd nearly died buying. I shut off the engine and listened. Nothing but the tick of cooling metal, the faint hum of city noise. But inside, it was still loud, the silence of that street. The way they looked at me, the weight of being somewhere I was never meant to stand. I thought about how easy it would have been for me to disappear in that cul-de-sac, a headline by morning, a story twisted by evening. Just another name, another warning. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing his face leaning through the window, hearing that question like a knife pressed flat. Where'd you say you're from? She thought selling an old couch would be simple. A routine Craigslist meetup, a quick cash exchange, nothing more. But when the buyer showed up with someone watching from the truck, everything changed. What started as a sale ended with a chilling reminder: some deals cost more than money. I posted the ad on a Thursday night, just trying to clear space in my apartment. A navy blue couch I'd had since college, still in good shape. Craigslist seemed easier than dealing with apps and their endless lowball offers. I set the price at $150, fair enough, and within an hour, a message popped up from someone named Tom. No profile picture, just, still available. Cash in hand. Can pick up Saturday. Straightforward. I said yes. He replied almost immediately, great. I'll bring a truck. Text me the address. By Saturday afternoon, the sky had that sharp white glare of midsummer. Heat was pushing through the windows even with the blinds drawn. I dragged the couch closer to the door, wiped down the arms, and double-checked my phone. No last-minute excuses, no flaky buyer this time. Just a simple exchange. At 3:17, a text, outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw the truck first, huge, older model, paint sun-faded and patchy. The kind you expect to see hauling lumber, not furniture. It idled by the curb, engine rumbling low. A man got out, white, maybe late 40s, wearing a sweat-stained cap and mirrored sunglasses. His shirt clung to his chest like he'd been working outside all day. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch, smiling just enough to keep it polite. Hey, you're here for the couch? He didn't answer right away. Just looked me over, head to toe, slow enough that I felt each second like a weight. Then he said, yeah. His voice was flat, like a door slamming shut. Okay, it's right inside, I said, moving toward the doorway. You'll need a hand getting it out. Where's your husband? He asked, cutting me off. The question hit like cold water. I don't, he's not here, I said carefully. It wasn't a lie, but the way he asked made something curl in my stomach. He smirked, just barely, and followed me in without waiting for an invitation. The smell of gasoline and sweat came with him, filling the small space. He didn't glance at the couch right away. His eyes lingered on my photos on the wall, my sister's graduation, my mom holding my niece, and something about the way he stared made me wish I'd taken them down. This it? He asked finally, nodding toward the couch. Yeah, I said, my voice too bright. Good condition. No stains, no rips. He walked around it slow, dragging his fingers across the fabric. Then he crouched, pressing his hand against the cushions like he was testing the weight of something invisible. When he stood, he was closer than before. Too close. Price firm? Yes, I said, and felt my throat tighten. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Guess it's worth it. You help me load it? The heat from outside felt like nothing compared to the heat crawling under my skin. Everything in me said no. Every instinct screamed to make an excuse, call it off, tell him I changed my mind. But his truck was still outside. My phone was on the counter, just out of reach. And his body was between me and the door. Sure, I said softly. When we stepped onto the porch with the couch between us, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The passenger door of his truck was open now. And someone was sitting inside. The person in the passenger seat wasn't a woman like I expected. It was another man. Bigger. Older. Thick arms resting on the open window, a cigarette burning slow between his fingers. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just watched us with that stillness that feels heavier than movement. My hands tightened on the couch cushion. "Friend of yours?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Neighbor," Tom said, like that explained anything. He adjusted his grip and nodded toward the truck bed. "Let's go." The air outside felt heavier than the couch. Cicadas buzzed loud in the trees, a sharp electric sound that made everything else too quiet. I kept glancing toward the man in the truck, hoping for something, maybe a sign of normal. Maybe a nod, but he just sat there, smoke curling in lazy spirals, eyes hidden behind shades. We maneuvered the couch down the steps, my arms straining, the fabric biting into my palms. Halfway to the truck, Tom stopped. "Hold it a second," he said, and stepped away, leaving me bent and sweating with the weight. He walked over to his friend, leaned down, said something I couldn't hear. Both of them laughed, soft, almost casual, but the sound made my skin crawl. I stared at the sidewalk, trying to breathe slow, trying not to look like someone about to run. My phone was still on the kitchen counter. Every open window behind me felt like an eye. When Tom came back, he was smiling wider than before. "All right," he said. "Let's finish this." We slid the couch into the bed of the truck, the thud echoing in the still air. I stepped back, wiping sweat from my forehead, forcing myself to sound normal when I said, "Okay, Cash?" Tom didn't answer right away. He walked to the driver's side, pulled a folded wad from the dash, and strolled back slow. "100, he said, peeling off bills. "It's 150, I reminded him, my voice thin. His smile didn't change. "100, he repeated, laying the money across his palm like an offering, or a dare. My chest tightened. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him the deal was clear. But the man in the passenger seat exhaled a long stream of smoke, eyes locked on me. Tom tilted his head, waiting. The sun beat down so hard it felt like it was pressing me into the concrete. "Fine," I said, and snatched the bills before my hands could shake. He chuckled low, like we just shared a private joke. "Good doing business," he said, climbing into the truck. I stood there on the porch, heart pounding, watching as they sat with the engine idling. The man in the passenger seat never looked away. Not until they pulled off slow, the truck rolling down the street like it had all the time in the world. I locked the door the second they turned the corner. Then I locked it again. I sat on the floor with my back against it, counting the bills over and over like maybe I'd misread them. I hadn't. $100 for a couch worth triple that. $100 and something I couldn't name left behind in the air. When night came, I didn't open the blinds. Every set of headlights that passed sent my breath into my throat. I kept thinking about the way they laughed. About how easy it would have been for me to end up in that truck, no one knowing where to look. Later, when my phone buzzed on the counter, I almost didn't check it. But I did. And there it was. "You're real easy to find out here." No name. No number I recognized. Just those words. I deleted my Craigslist account before midnight. They just wanted a dining table for their home. A short drive, a quick exchange, nothing more. But when the trucks appeared and the questions started, the family realized something. They weren't just buying furniture. They were fighting to make it back alive. It started as something simple, a Saturday drive with my wife and son to pick up a used dining table I found on Craigslist. We'd outgrown the old one, and this felt like a bargain. The seller's name was Jerry. He said he lived about an hour away, in a quiet town just outside the city. The pictures looked good, solid oak, 6 chairs, barely a scratch. "Cash only," he wrote. That was fine with me. The sky was heavy with summer clouds when we pulled onto the interstate, the kind of heat where the air conditioner never feels like enough. My wife, Renee, hummed along to the radio while our 8-year-old, Marcus, kicked the back of my seat softly, asking every 10 minutes how much longer. Just a little while, I told him, forcing a smile. The farther we drove, the emptier things got. The billboards changed from bright ads for malls and gyms to peeling signs for gun shows and hardware stores. Gas stations grew sparse. When we finally turned off the highway, the roads narrowed, lined with trees so tall they blocked the horizon. Renee went quiet. I felt it too, that tightness in the chest, that sense you've crossed an invisible line. We rolled into a neighborhood that looked pulled from an old postcard. Wide lawns. White fences. Houses so far apart you could lose yourself in the space between. I slowed as I reached the address Jerry sent. The house was huge, pale brick with green shutters. A flag fluttered from the porch, not the American one, but something older, darker, that made my stomach sink. Is that? Renee started, then stopped. I didn't answer. The driveway stretched like a runway, leading up to a garage big enough to hold 3 trucks. One of them sat out front now, a lifted pickup with tires like boulders. A man stood beside it, arms folded across his chest, watching us as we pulled up. Tall. Broad. Sunburned skin under a baseball cap. That must be Jerry, I said, trying to sound steady. My voice didn't fool Renee. I parked near the edge of the driveway, leaving enough room to back out quick if I had to. We stepped out, the heat slamming into us like a wall. The man didn't move. Didn't wave. Just stared. Hey, I called, lifting a hand halfway. Here for the table. He looked at me a long moment before answering. You're early. His voice was flat. Traffic was light, I said, forcing a smile. His eyes flicked to Renee, then to Marcus, who clutched her hand like he knew something wasn't right. Jerry's jaw tightened. Then he nodded toward the garage. Tables inside. We followed him up the drive, our footsteps crunching on gravel that sounded too loud in the heavy silence. I kept glancing around, noticing things I wished I hadn't: the yard signs near the porch, the sticker on the truck's bumper, the way curtains in the front window shifted just enough to tell me someone else was watching. When we reached the garage, Jerry swung the door open. Inside, the table sat against the wall, exactly like the pictures. But my relief didn't last. There were other things in there: mounted deer heads, a Confederate flag draped along the back wall, a workbench cluttered with tools that could do more than fix furniture. Nice piece, Jerry said, running his hand over the polished wood. You got the cash? I swallowed. Yeah, I said, patting my pocket. That's when he smiled, not warm, not friendly, but slow and sharp, like a blade catching the light. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't before: his truck wasn't the only one in the driveway anymore. A second truck had pulled in behind ours. Same size, same lifted tires, same dull roar of an engine that sounded like it belonged to something hunting. 2 men sat inside. They didn't get out. They didn't need to. Just sat there, doors shut, eyes behind dark glasses. My hand tightened around Marcus's shoulder. We'll make it quick, I told him, voice low enough that it sounded like a promise. Jerry leaned against the workbench now. Arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his mouth like this was all a game only he knew the rules to. You said 1,500, right? He asked. That's right, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I reached for the envelope in my pocket, counting out bills with hands that wanted to shake. Renee stood close, her grip on Marcus's arm so tight he winced. Jerry didn't take the money at first. Just stared at it. Then at me. Then at Renee. Where y'all from? He asked. Midtown, I said, steady as I could. He nodded slow, like turning the word over in his head. Long drive. Hope it was worth it. I slid the cash toward him. He finally took it, thumbing through the bills with deliberate slowness. Behind me, I could hear the second truck's engine cut off. Doors creaked open. Boots hit gravel. My stomach knotted so hard I thought I'd be sick. "Tell you what," Jerry said, folding the money. "Help me load it. Table's heavy." Every instinct screamed to say no. To grab Renee and Marcus and run. But the sound of those boots behind us held me like a vice. So I nodded. "Sure," I said, my throat dry as sand. We lifted the table together, the wood solid and unyielding. My arms burned as we shuffled toward the driveway. The two men from the truck stood waiting now. One lit a cigarette. The other just stared at Marcus, his face blank in a way that made my blood run cold. "Big kid," he said finally, his voice like gravel. 8, I managed. "Gonna be strong," he muttered, almost to himself, and took a long drag from his cigarette. We slid the table into the back of our SUV, strapping it down with hands that fumbled too much. My shirt clung to me, soaked with sweat that had nothing to do with the heat. I slammed the hatch shut, praying it wouldn't jam, praying for anything that would let us leave. Jerry stood there, smiling that same sharp smile. "Safe drive home," he said, like a joke no one else could hear. I mumbled thanks, herded Renee and Marcus into the car, and locked the doors so fast it made Marcus flinch. My hands shook as I started the engine. Gravel spit under the tires when I backed out, the second truck's headlights flaring bright in the mirror. They didn't move at first. Just sat there, blocking the road like a wall. I could feel Renee's breath quicken, could hear Marcus whisper, "Daddy," in a voice that cracked my soul. Then, slowly, the truck rolled forward, pulling alongside as we hit the main road. It stayed there for miles, pacing us like a shadow. Every turn I made, it followed. My hands gripped the wheel until my fingers went numb. Finally, after what felt like an hour, the truck peeled off onto a dirt road without warning, disappearing in a cloud of dust. My chest didn't loosen. Not when the road widened. Not when the highway lights appeared. Not even when our apartment building came into view. That night, we ate in silence. Marcus fell asleep on the couch, clutching his toy car like a lifeline. Renee sat staring at nothing, her hands trembling in her lap. And me, I kept thinking about Jerry's last words. About how easy it would have been for us to never make it back. I deleted the Craigslist app before midnight. They just wanted a simple piece of furniture. A family drive, a fair deal, nothing more. But when the seller followed them down empty roads, the quiet countryside turned into a trap with no safe way out. Some exchanges don't end when the cash changes hands. We just needed a bed frame. That was all. Something sturdy for the guest room before my mother came to stay. I found a listing on Craigslist late Thursday night, solid wood, barely used, $200. The pictures looked perfect, and the seller, Dan, replied within minutes. His message was short and almost cheerful, "Still have it. Cash only. Come by Saturday." It felt like an easy win. We'd take the SUV, bring some straps, and make a day of it. Renee, my wife, even suggested grabbing lunch on the way back. Our son, Marcus, groaned when he heard. He's 12 and allergic to anything that takes him away from his video games, but eventually he agreed. Saturday came warm and bright, the kind of day that makes you forget the world can turn dark without warning. We loaded a couple of old blankets to pad the wood and hit the road around noon. The address Dan gave us was an hour out, past the Beltway, in a town we'd only heard of when the news talked about summer fairs and high school football scores. The farther we drove, the more the landscape thinned. Gas stations gave way to feed stores. Roads stretched empty between fields where the grass waved like tired hands. My chest tightened in a way I didn't name out loud. Renee noticed anyway. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." When we finally turned onto Dan Street, it felt like stepping into another world. Big houses with wide lawns sat spaced far apart, their porches draped in flags. Some were the usual stars and stripes. Others weren't. Renee's hand found mine on the console, and we didn't say what we both saw. The house was a pale yellow two-story with black shutters and a driveway that could park 10 cars. A large pickup sat out front, its hood glinting in the sun. Dan was there too, tall, white, maybe mid-40s. He wore a sleeveless shirt that showed off arms inked with something I didn't want to look at too closely. He waved when we pulled up, but it wasn't the kind of wave that makes you feel welcome. More like a signal. "Afternoon," I said as we stepped out. My voice sounded thinner than I wanted. "Hey," he replied, his smile quick and gone like a flicker of light. His eyes lingered on Renee, then on Marcus, who clutched his tablet like a shield. "The frame's in the garage," Dan said, jerking his head toward the open door. Inside, the frame was leaning against the wall, exactly like the photos. Solid wood. Heavy. The kind of thing that would last for years. "Looks good," I said, crouching to check the legs. My voice echoed in the wide, quiet space. Dan stood in the doorway, arms folded. "Cash." I pulled the envelope from my pocket and handed it over. His fingers brushed mine, rough and calloused, lingering just a second too long. He counted the bills slow, like he wanted me to feel every second of it. "All right," he said finally. "Let's load it up." We wrestled the frame out of the garage, the sun baking the back of my neck. Renee hovered near Marcus, who had gone silent. I kept telling myself this was nothing, just a man selling furniture, but the way Dan's eyes tracked us made the air feel heavy. When the frame was finally strapped down, I thanked him and climbed behind the wheel, eager to get back on the open road. For a few blessed minutes, it felt normal again, wind in the windows, Marcus humming along to his game, Renee scrolling on her phone. Then I checked the rearview mirror. Dan's truck was there. Half a mile back. Keeping pace. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was heading into town. Maybe he just happened to take the same road. But every turn I made, his truck made too. "Is that him?" Renee asked quietly, eyes flicking to the mirror. "Yeah," I said, my voice low. The sky felt bigger out here, the sun glaring down like an unblinking eye. The road stretched ahead in a long, lonely ribbon. No other cars. No gas stations. Just us, and him. I eased the speed up. Just a little. The truck matched it. When I slowed, so did he. My hands tightened on the wheel. Renee reached back to grip Marcus's knee. Our son looked up from his tablet, his wide eyes meeting mine in the mirror. "Dad," he whispered. "Everything's fine," I lied. I took a turn onto a county road, hoping to shake him. Gravel popped under the tires, dust curling in the air behind us. For a few seconds, the mirror was empty. Then his truck swung into view again, closer now. Too close. Renee's breath hitched. "What does he want?" I didn't answer because I didn't know. Or maybe I did, and saying it out loud would make it real. Up ahead, I saw a narrow stretch where the trees leaned in, their shadows slicing across the pavement. No houses. No side roads. Just a tunnel of green and dark. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it. "Call 911, I told Renee. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking. The bars flickered, one, then none. Dead zone. Of course. The truck surged forward, its grille filling the mirror. For one sickening moment, I thought he was going to ram us. Then he backed off, just enough to keep us sweating. Like he wanted us to know he could. Marcus whimpered in the back. That sound, that small, broken sound, lit something in me. I hit the gas, engine screaming, the SUV lurching forward so hard Renee grabbed the dash. The truck followed, dust boiling behind him like smoke. Then, as sudden as it started, he turned off. No signal. No warning. Just swung down a dirt track and vanished between the trees. I didn't slow down. Not for miles. Not until the first gas station appeared like an oasis in the heat. I pulled in fast, heart slamming, hands slick on the wheel. Renee jumped out and locked eyes with me over the roof of the car. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Inside the gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. Marcus clung to my leg, his face buried in my side. Renee's phone lit up with service again, and she stared at the screen like it held the answer to something none of us could name. We waited 20 minutes before getting back on the road. Every set of headlights in the distance made my throat tighten. Every turn felt like a trap. When we finally pulled into our driveway, the sun was gone, and the streetlights looked weak against the dark. I carried Marcus inside, his small body heavy with sleep, and for the first time all day, I let myself breathe. But later that night, when the house was quiet, I stepped to the window and saw it, a pair of headlights rolling slow past the corner. Then another, an hour later. Always too far to see the plates. Always lingering just long enough. I didn't sleep. Neither did Renee. I deleted my Craigslist account before sunrise. Thanks so much for watching. Your support truly means the world to me. Every like, every comment helps this channel grow and keeps me going. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. My dream right now is to reach 100 subscribers, and with your help, I know it's possible. See you in the next one.